right. So thank you again to everybody for hosting this and for everyone for showing up and carving time out of your day. Again, my name's Leon Adato. I'm a middle-aged white dude giving a webinar. Like, what else do you need to know? I am principal technical advocate at Catchpoint. You can find me as Leon Adato on almost every social media platform. And of course, you can find Catchpoint at catchpoint.com. Oops. Hang on. There we go. Let's make sure my pointer's working. There we go. Quickly, we're going to do some quick introductions. That's where we are right now. Then we're going to talk about those 5 myths and then how to move from the myth to the manageable. I'm actually going to float back and forth between 2 and 3. 2 and 3 in the sense that I'm going to talk about a myth. I'm going to talk about ways to get to the reality of the myth, and then I'll go to the next myth. So 2 and 3 are going to be sort of on a loop. And then finally, we'll do wrap up, Q&A, drinks, celebrations, libations, all of the rest of that stuff. The housekeeping, it is the year of our tech 2025. I'm presuming you've been in a webinar or two before. As mentioned there, as Haley mentioned, there's a Q&A area. Go ahead and ask whatever. And, yes, we're being recorded. Yes, the recording will be shared, etc. All right, moving on. More importantly than all that, I want you to understand that this is what I call an oyster talk. Now, what I mean is that I have about an hour, give or take. I cannot teach you anything in an hour. In fact, in 1 hour, about the only thing I can do is irritate you. Now, when an oyster becomes irritated, it does one of 2 things. It either creates this beautiful pearl or it dies. I sincerely hope I do not irritate you to death today, but I did feel like it was a friendly gesture to warn you that that was a possibility. Instead, what I hope is that I give you just the grain of an idea, which you will then layer over with your own experiences and ideas until what you have is something that is polished and unique and valuable to you. So let's get started with myth number 1. Monitoring is just an IT operations problem. That is a myth. By monitoring, by the way, when I talk about it, I mean the entire kit and caboodle. I'm talking about observability or APM or any specific technique or technology like NetFlow or tracing or log aggregation or smoke signals or the Psychic Friends network. Variations of this myth that you might hear include monitoring is a cost center, or monitoring is just an interruption, or since we have CI/CD and containers and orchestration and automatic rollback, we don't need monitoring anymore because it'll just fix itself. These are all variations of the same myth. And finally, monitoring is for compliance and audit, not the business. So that's the myth. What's the reality? What's the truth? First of all, monitoring is a business critical function that impacts revenue and customer experience. And for proof, I bring to you 2 points, one from Forrester, one from Gartner, just so I'm getting the entire group together. Forrester said in one of their experience indexes that 73% of customers say that they will abandon a brand, not just a page, a brand, after 2 bad digital experiences. Meanwhile, Gartner said that by 2026, 70% of organizations who successfully apply observability will make their decisions, business decisions, faster. So the bottom line is that monitoring is not about server uptime. It's about revenue protection and brand equality, and that makes it a C-suite priority. Now, we need to be honest. In fact, we have always needed to shift from reactive alerts to proactive business alignment, which are pretty words. But what do I mean by that? It boils down to 2 key things. 1, your user experience is everything. Nothing else matters, or at least it doesn't matter at 2 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I understand that the disk that's throwing errors in the disk array number 27 needs to be fixed. But if the customer experience isn't being impacted, it can wait until morning. Okay? Second, every alert needs to have a human action. If it's not an alert. Now, that doesn't mean it's nothing. It might be a dashboard. It might be a report. It might be something else, but it's not an alert. Okay? Monitoring should be seen as a strategic function that directly impacts customer satisfaction and business outcomes. Applying observability enables competitive advantage for IT and business processes, and it highlights the importance that aligning your monitoring with the business outcomes, not just IT metrics, is essential. All right? So that's that first myth. Now, what can you do about it? First of all, align your IT metrics with business outcomes. Matching monitoring to your business outcome is key. Using metrics like customer churn or conversion rates or revenue impact instead of focusing solely on technical KPIs. Second, adopt observability practices. When you're thinking about the tools that you have or the tools that you want to have, I'm not saying Catchpoint, but I'm also not saying Catchpoint, you want to consider observability tools that provide real-time insights into how IT performance affect business outcomes. If all you're getting is uptime, then you probably are using a tool that's not good enough anymore. And finally, promote cross-functional collaboration. That means ensuring that teams, not just IT teams, but business teams, work closely together to communicate the business value that monitoring has, and then prioritize the monitoring efforts that directly impact customer satisfaction. So if I had to have a last word on this entire myth, I would say that aligning your monitoring with business outcomes, not just IT metrics, translates to competitive advantages in the marketplace. And that's a message that we as IT practitioners can bring forward to our executives. Okay, myth number 2, more data equals better visibility. Now, I know that sounds almost intuitively obvious, right? Like, yeah, sure, if I have more data, then I know what's going on. Sure, but a variation of this myth is when folks install a new monitoring tool and then decide to turn all the features on, and then we'll figure out what's really important later. And then they get hit with this fire hose information, and their immediate reaction is, oh my gosh, turn it off, okay? One of my friends, Alec Isaacson, who happens to be a solution architect over at Grafana, he likes to share a conversation with a customer that he had several years ago. He said, the customer said, I collect metrics from my most critical systems every 5 seconds because once a long time ago, someone got yelled at when the system was slow and the metrics didn't tell them why. Okay, we get caught up with this sort of organizational history where someone got beat up a long time ago and therefore we don't want it to happen to us. Meanwhile, another friend of mine, Evelyn Osman, who's the head of platform over at NMAC, told me that at one client she was at, all the instrumentation and logging was enabled along with a lengthy retention period, like a really, really expensive retention period. And the justification the business had was, well, it's just in case. So that's the myth. Have all the data, keep all the data. We never know what we're going to need, so we better have it all. That's the myth. What's the reality? Monitor everything is an old-fashioned concept from the days of paying an S&MP when we really didn't have a lot of input to monitor, and we had to infer the customer experience, what was happening to the real users. We couldn't know that directly. We had to infer it from all these metrics down below. So the more we could have, the better. Also, there wasn't that much. So collecting everything wasn't a lot. But today, in the day of tracing and flow and RUM, it has made the idea of capturing, enriching, transforming, normalizing, and storing all of that data, every single data point and every single record, not only impossible, it's financially unfeasible. And that's before you even get to the question of how are we going to query this without the queries taking 27 days to finish. Now, machine learning and data science, I say that word specifically, can help prioritize the signal over the noise and enable faster root cause analysis, but that's not a panacea. So on the slide, I forgot to read the slide. Let's get to it. More data often creates noise. Actionable insights come from focusing on the right data. And the proof is that modern systems will generate terabytes, petabytes of telemetry data, but effective monitoring isn't about collecting everything. It's about identifying patterns and correlations that matter. And the bottom line is that data, so people have said for a long time, data is the new oil. And I like that idea. I like the idea that it's valuable and it's, and it has energy. It drives your business forward. However, it's not like the new oil. It's like the new plutonium. And we should treat it like that. What I mean is that it is intrinsically valuable because it's, can drive, it can provide power to your business. However, it's also explosive and toxic in the wrong amounts, and we need to handle it properly. So if somebody says to you, oh, data's the new oil, you can respond, data's the new plutonium. It just reframes what you're doing with it. So how can we move forward? What can we do about it? First of all, focus on key metrics. Again, identify the KPIs and the metrics that drive your business and monitor those closely. And things that are less about the business should get less emphasis. Not no emphasis, obviously. You want to leverage AI, machine learning and data science. And wait, give me 2 more myths and I'm just going to go off on the whole AI thing. Just hold hold on for a minute, but use machine learning and data science tools to filter irrelevant data and to surface actionable insights. And finally, implement distributed tracing. Understand how different services interact with tracing to pinpoint bottlenecks or failures more effectively. And by distributed tracing, we could also lump OpenTelemetry and a lot of tools that, again, give you the insights of the user's experience along the way. All right, so that's myth number 2. Moving forward. Myth number 3, internal metrics tell the full story. So in the last myth, I talked about how collect all the data was a holdover from the old days of SNMP and paying and stuff like that. And this myth happens to be closely related to it. So once upon a time, this myth was actually very, very true. Internal metrics told the entire story. Not because that was the best way, it was the only way. All we had was internal system metrics or network metrics to know. We didn't have application metrics to know about it. And once it stopped being true, once we had other tools like synthetic transactions and RUM and tracing, once that was possible, most of us moved right onto that bandwagon because it was awesome and is awesome. But some folks either emotionally, mentally, or even experientially remain stuck that this myth happens to continue to be the reality, and it's simply not. So what's the truth? Most performance issues originate outside the firewall, meaning outside where your application is homed, whether it's in the cloud or it's on-prem or it's some sort of hybrid approach. Most of your performance issues happen not there. They happen somewhere else. Real visibility requires end-to-end visibility, observability, which I'll get to in a second. The proof is that your cloud provider's 99.999, whatever you want, SLA doesn't account for the last mile, where 80% of the performance issues originate. When I say last mile, I mean the distance between the user who's actually trying to use your site or application and whatever a mile from that is. That's where most of the performance issues occur. The bottom line is that true observability looks beyond the firewall to the user's reality. So just to be clear about this, when I say internal, I'm talking about the network, the server, the application, and it doesn't really tell you anything about how a user in their home, their office, their car is experiencing your service. For that matter, even if the internal means outside the site or application, but it's on the same cloud provider, you still don't know squat. Right? Because your users aren't in the cloud. They are somewhere else. End-to-end, I said I was going to go over this. End-to-end is a great term, but it suffers from the same problem as saying door-to-door. Like, whose door are we talking about? We can guess it means my door and someplace else, but I'm not exactly sure. So which ends do we mean? In this case, if end-to-end doesn't start with the user and end with your application, or as close as you can get to the user, then you really don't know how your system is performing. And there's another nuance. There are many ends when it comes to your site or your application, not just the user to the application front end, but also within your application, you're doing API calls. Even if you think you aren't, trust me, you are doing API calls. And therefore, another end-to-end experience is going to be from your application internals to the remote API and back. And if that's having a performance problem, even if the distance to the user is okay, it still means the user is going to experience a performance issue that's not happening inside the application. It's happening somewhere outside and probably beyond your firewall, just in a different direction. Finally, I will share a quote that I love from my friend Charity Majors. She is the CTO of Honeycomb, and she famously said, "Nines don't mean anything if your users aren't happy." She actually said nines don't mean something else that I won't say because it's a family show if your users aren't happy. But the point stands that 99.999 isn't really important. What's important is the user's experience. Okay, so what do you do about it? What can you do? First of all, expand your monitoring scope. Find all the ends. It's not just two. It's not just the user and the front end. It's going to be so. And by the way, the user and the front end. Hopefully you have more than one user, right? So it's the users all across the globe. That's one set of end-to-end, but there's also the end-to-end of APIs, the end-to-end of from the back end to the database, etc. And then find ways to monitor the performance to and from each of those points. You want to include metrics that show things like load times and API response times and third-party performance. Second, integrate business metrics with XLOs. Okay, another TLA, three-letter acronym. Experience level objectives. They're right up there with SLOs and SLAs and SLIs and all the rest of them. But the XLOs include things like wait time, response time, first contentful paint, largest contentful paint, time to interactive. These are all things that tell you how the user's experience of your application or site are going. And they allow you to measure and predict the experience of a site or app from the user's perspective. More to the point, it lets you bridge IT performance, that system performance, to business outcomes. Third, use internet performance monitoring. That's another TLA IPM. It might be a new term for you. It's a term that we here at Catchpoint use a lot. It's similar to the concept of APM, application performance monitoring, but where APM tends to be system-centric and focuses on known locations, IPM, internet performance monitoring, changes the context. It imagines that the internet is your application infrastructure, because it is now. And so it looks at everything and monitors everything as if it is one cohesive application platform all the way across, rather than I have my app and my application performance monitoring, and then I have all this other stuff that's happening out there. That's different. All right? Okay, fourth myth. Remember I told you about AI? Here we go. AI will automatically fix monitoring automatically. Yeah. Okay, I will admit to being an AI curmudgeon. In fact, I own the website AIcurmudgeon.com. So this myth is especially frustrating for me. Monitoring and observability hasn't been immune to the breathless, unskeptical embrace of the AI hype that's permeated almost every aspect of tech and gets inserted into everything from my toaster to my tennis shoes. The idea that sprinkling AI over everything and doing so will suddenly allow it to operate independent of all human interaction is right up there with the set it and forget it mythology that was in the 90s. Okay. If your idea of AI is a language interface to the existing functions within a tool that's not AI, that's spicy autocorrect. It's clippy with an attitude. It is, and forgive me for being crass, a bullshit marketing term for 3 if statements in a trench coat and a stochastic parrot slapped in front of it. Real AI, which I will point out is damn hard and super expensive to do in any meaningful way, is all about taking large sets of data and applying machine learning and data science to find new correlations. But machine learning and data science isn't as sexy sounding as AI to the marketing folks. So just make sure that when you're looking at tools that say it has AI and agentic AI and all that, that you're looking at something that's doing real work and isn't just a ragged up front end for ChatGPT. Now, let's presume that you and your tools are doing the good AI, right? Machine learning based on a large data set that you acquired, didn't steal. You could still fall prey to bad data, because if you feed it garbage, you're going to get garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. It might be highly polished, delightfully looking garbage, but it's still going to be garbage. All right, so that's my little rant about AI. More about the reality of this is that AI is only as good as the data it analyzes. Clean, contextual data is essential for your success. I also heard just today that if you have less than 9 months of rolling data that you're training on, and that data has to be consistent, then you're probably drawing wrong inferences from that data. So it requires a lot of discipline with that data. So the proof. One against Gartner in Gartner Newsroom said by 2026, 60% of AI-driven IT projects will fail without the proper data readiness. This isn't something you can throw together in a weekend. My bottom line, AI can enhance monitoring by identifying patterns and predicting failures, but poor data quality or tools that have been overhyped undermines its effectiveness. So what can you do about it? First of all, invest in data quality, obviously. Establish governance frameworks to ensure that you have clean, consistent data inputs for your AI models. Second, adopt a shift-left observability strategy. You want to integrate monitoring observability into your development cycle earlier and make it part of the normal stuff, just like unit tests, just like sorry, my brain isn't working, but just like all of your testing, you want to have observability built in from the beginning so that you can monitor and know what kinds of signals you should be expecting out of this application or site from the get-go. And finally, you want to tailor your AI solutions by context. All right. You want to customize your AI-driven monitoring strategies based on the criticality of each application or service. You want to know whether the thing that you want AI to do is to predict something or to analyze something or to simply provide an easier interface, because those are very different tool sets and very different technologies that you're asking for. Okay. Moving on. Last myth, the last one. Downtime is the only metric that matters. And this myth has not changed since the earliest days of monitoring and observability. It's so pervasive that I've had folks ask me if I could manually recolor dashboards to show things that were showing up red, to recolor them green, because, and I am not making up this quote, it's not really down, it's just kind of downish. And you know what? The interesting thing is, they're not exactly wrong, although, no, I'm not going to do that. But that's the myth. So a lot of us have been saying slow is the new down since at least 2015. That doesn't make it any less true just because we've said it a lot over the last 10 years. But to be clear, nobody is saying don't monitor uptime. All right, obviously that matters. It's just not the only thing that matters. The folks who say that their systems weren't down were channeling Charity Majors. The flip side of nines don't matter if customers aren't happy is that if the users are happy, outages aren't something that should drag people out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so let's go over the slide. Slows the new down. Performance degradation can erode trust long before the outage occurs. Well, I think we've hammered that home, that user experience is everything. The proof, 53% of mobile users, according to Google benchmarks, 53% of mobile users will drop off if a page takes more than 3 seconds to load. 3 seconds is an eternity in internet time. And therefore, the statistics, this is just based on usage. This isn't a survey of asking people what they think they'll do or whatever. Google was looking at the actual usage data. Bottom line, performance degradation silently erodes trust long before the outages occur. Monitoring has to evolve from tracking availability alone to measuring user experience metrics like page load times and transaction speeds, which I've talked about before. This is not new. Okay, fine. So, what else can we do about this? How do we move forward? All right. First of all, monitor user experience metrics. Yes, okay, we're back to those XLOs. You want to track latency, load times, transaction completion rates, time to interactive, alongside, not instead of, alongside traditional uptime metrics, because those do matter. They're just not the only things that matter. The XLOs will ensure that your monitoring aligns with user satisfaction and business outcomes. Second, use predictive analytics. Leverage historical data trends to anticipate potential slowdowns before they impact users, which would allow you to enable proactive intervention. That means, it's a really fancy way of saying baselining, right? Take the data that you have, and we're not talking about AI or ChatGPT or any of that stuff. We're just talking about baselining, using your predictive trends over time and saying, oh, I see that at the end of the month, when I'm doing my end of month closing, that causes an impact on blah, 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 or whatever. Or, when it's Black Friday or what have you, this is, these are trouble points for me. And therefore I should be more aware of the environment and see what else I can do ahead of time. Okay, finally, implement proactive remediation plans. Automate responses. Remember I said that if a human's not involved, it's not an alert? Okay, if a human is not involved, but something went wrong that you have to fix right now, that's called automation. Make sure you're leveraging it. It is one of the things that people do not do enough or think about enough. Their first reaction is, oh, we want to alert, we're going to cut a ticket or send an email or kick off somebody's pager or whatever it is, and now we're done. No, you're not. You should think about, what is that human going to do when they get that message? Oh, they're going to type the Grafrinkle command on the keyboard, and that's just going to clear it all. Well, you know what, Skippy? How about I just type the Grafrinkle command for you and let you know if it didn't fix it? So automation for common, known performance issues like traffic spikes or resource bottlenecks will minimize the impact and ensure seamless experiences. It will also allow your staff to sleep longer. It will make them happier people. It will also, all joking aside, mean that when they do get an alert, they know it's real. They know that the automation has done everything it possibly can, and now this is a real problem that they really need to come and use their real human brain to fix. Okay, deep breath, deep cleansing breath, because I threw a lot of stuff at you, and I know I talk nonstop all day really fast. I know I do. Okay, so let's take a look at what we just covered and see if there's more information on how we can move forward. All right, so if we want to rethink monitoring, and again, I mean observability and all the rest, for the age of complexity, for today's internet, for today's applications, it's not just about uptime or data collection. It is about aligning IT performance with business outcomes, prioritizing user experience, leveraging predictive analytics to stay ahead of the issues. Those three things. If you don't remember anything else, take a screen cap of this slide, or it's going to be recorded so you can watch it later. Those are the three top things. Monitoring has evolved, boy has it, from a back office function that really just kept, the IT practitioners happy because our systems were running and all that stuff, to a strategic enabler of resilience and customer trust and competitive differentiation. Yes, monitoring is competitively differentiating. The only thing holding it back now are folks who continue to believe in the myths that I have just covered. As enterprises face increasing complexity, CIOs, who I presume are some of you all, or people that, or maybe there's a CIO that you know and love and want to share this with. CIOs who cling to outdated assumptions like the ones that we talked about today risk falling behind, not just to their competitors, but also falling behind to customer expectations. So it's my hope that you take what I've shared today and shift your approach in terms of monitoring and observability and transform it into a competitive advantage. So the key takeaways: monitoring is strategic. You want to elevate your monitoring from an IT operations function to a C-suite priority, which is tied directly to revenue and customer satisfaction. Second, you want to focus on actionable insights. Collect the right data, not just more data, and use AI, machine learning and data science-driven tools to surface meaningful patterns. You want to expand visibility, going beyond internal metrics to monitor end-to-end user experiences and external factors affecting performance. You want to prioritize your data quality. You want to invest in clean, contextual data that will help you unlock the full potential of AI, machine learning, and data science-driven monitoring. And finally, you want to measure user experience. You want to adopt those XLOs that we talked about to track metrics that reflect customer satisfaction alongside technical KPIs. At the end of the day, you want to ask yourself, your team, your C-level executives, are you monitoring what matters, or are you just monitoring what's easy to monitor? The answer that you get back will define your organization's ability to thrive in an era when seamless digital experiences are the foundation of success.